Hi everyone, I'm Karen from the Peace Discipline channel where you can learn more about nonviolent discipline. In today's video, we'll be looking at giving children choices and whether or not this is helpful. This video will be relevant to parents, to teachers, and anyone else who works with or cares for children. What is a choice? This may seem really obvious, but I feel it's important to explain what a choice is or isn't in relation to discipline, because so many of us associate discipline with being threatened or punished, instead of seeing it as teaching and guiding and supporting children to do better. So a choice is when you give a child an option and it's genuinely up to them to decide what to do. For example, would you like an apple or a banana? Or which homework would you like to do first, your reading or your mathematics? But if you say, are you going to stop that or do you want a hiding? That is not a choice. That is a threat. The adult is being coercive, trying to force a child to make the choice they want. Sometimes the adult seems to give a choice, but then tries to tell the child what to choose. Like, why don't we visit your auntie today? As though it's optional. But then, when the child doesn't feel like visiting, the parent launches into a sales pitch on the idea, trying to persuade them to want to visit. Maybe this is because they already made the arrangements. It's confusing for the child. They thought they had a choice, but now it seems like they're bad if they don't choose the choice that their parent wants them to choose. If you find yourself trying to influence or control a child's choice, trying to steer them in a certain direction with threats, or even just persuasion, then you are not really giving a choice. For it to be a real choice, you need to be okay with the child choosing either option. If you are highly invested in the child choosing a certain thing, then maybe you shouldn't make it a choice. For example, instead of, why don't we visit your auntie? The parent could simply have said, today we're going to visit your auntie. Now let's look at the questions for today's video. Does it help to give children choices? What does the research say about giving choices? Should you always give a child a choice? Or are there times when it's better not to? First, we'll look at the research, and then I'll integrate that with some stories and examples from the home and classroom. In the science of behavior analysis, giving a child a choice is classified as an antecedent intervention. In other words, it's something you do before a problem behavior occurs. For example, if your child sometimes has meltdowns, an antecedent intervention is anything you do before a meltdown to make it less likely to happen. There are lots of different antecedent interventions, and many of us use them every day without even realizing it. Perhaps you packed a snack for your child before you went out because you knew that everything would go more smoothly if they had a snack available when they got hungry. Perhaps you have a great bedtime routine with your child, which helps prevent problems with going to sleep. Perhaps, as a teacher, you spent time explaining the rules to new students so that they would know what was expected of them and be less likely to misbehave. We tend to think of discipline as something that happens after a problem behavior, but in fact there are many tools that we can use before the time to make problem behavior less likely to happen. Giving a choice is this kind of tool. Reviewing the research on nonviolent discipline options, we found that giving choices has been studied quite a lot. For example, school children were found to eat more fruit and vegetables if they were given a choice of which to eat. But they were also more likely to eat them if they were not given a choice to have none at all. We'll come back to this later, but this already suggests that there are times when choice is helpful and times when it's better not to give a choice. There are many studies of teachers and other adults using choice with good results. And by good results, I mean that positive behaviors like working well on a task increased, and problem behaviors like aggression or disruptive behaviors decreased when children were given more choice. Choice was particularly helpful when children had to do tasks that they didn't like. It was used in a number of ways. For example, a choice between two activities, a choice about the order of activities, or a choice of which materials to use for the task, a choice of where to do the task, or a choice of reward once the task was finished. Aside from improving behavior, a number of studies showed that offering choices increased intrinsic motivation for children and adolescents. And this had the related outcomes that they put more effort into their tasks, performed better, and saw themselves as more competent afterwards. These are great outcomes, but there was also a caution. One review found that the positive effects of choice started to diminish after 5 or more choices had been made. Although choice has positive effects, it seems it's possible to give too much choice. I'll say more about this later. So in general, research shows that giving children choices can be a very helpful thing to do in discipline. But how does this look in practice? If you know that your child usually has a meltdown when given a certain instruction, consider giving them a choice over something to do with that task. For example, you want to wash now or in 5 minutes' time? Or it's time to bath now. Would you like bubble bath? Or shall we try one of those big fizzy bath bombs? Should you always give your child a choice? No. There are many situations where it's better not to give a choice. Notice that in each of the examples I just mentioned, the parents didn't give the children the option not to bath. So we need to use our attunement. Remember that attunement is when you tune into the child so that your responses can fit well with their needs and their signals. If you know that a child really needs something, like they need to sleep or eat or wash, then don't make that thing optional. On the other hand, if their signals are showing you that they're really not keen on doing something, then giving some choice to do with that task can be really helpful because choice can increase motivation. Let's say your child is reluctant to get going in the morning, and then you offer them a choice of what music to listen to in the car on the way to school. Or let's say they're reluctant to do their homework, and so you give them a choice of where to do their homework or in which order to do the tasks, or what reward to look forward to if they finish it by a certain time. A grandmother shared a nice story about helping her grandson, who was a very picky eater, eat more healthy foods. She turned supper time into a game involving a pyramid of foods. There were 5 items at the bottom, followed by 4, and then 3, 2, and 1. In the bottom 3 rows, she had mostly fruits and vegetables and healthy things. In the second to top row, she had 2 items that she knew he would love to eat, and in the very top row was a treat. The rules of the game were that he had to start at the bottom and qualify for each different level of the pyramid. He could choose what to eat, but he had to eat 3 out of 5 in the bottom row and 2 out of 4 in the next row. And then he had to eat 2 out of 3 in the next row. He qualified to eat the 2 things above that, which he usually enjoyed eating. And if he finished that row, he could get the treat at the very top. His grandmother reported that this really helped. Mealtimes were now fun. The game ensured that the boy didn't have the option not to eat vegetables, but he did have choices about which items to eat in each row, and this motivated him to eat things that he would usually have just left on his plate. So giving choices can really help, but not too much choice. Think of what might happen if you were to open the cupboard and ask your 3 or 4-year-old, so what would you like to wear to school today? They might take ages deciding, or they might choose something unsuitable. Bathing costume? Fairy wings? Flip-flops. In the middle of winter. Instead of asking a young child to choose between all their clothes, it would be better to present 2 or 3 viable items. Which warm top would you like to wear? The brown fluffy one or the blue one? It's great to have choice. There's also such a thing as choice overload. You don't need to choose between all their clothes. Limiting options can be very important in discipline. When I was working in the aftercare with the 3 to 6-year-olds, there was a pile of mattresses in the corner. Now, children can think of lots of things to do with a pile of mattresses. Some took some mattresses off the pile to try to build a house. Others saw that pile of mattresses and started running and crashing into it. Another tried to make a slide from the top of the mattresses to the bottom, but that caused the whole pile to fall over. Children building the house were distracted by this and abandoned what they were doing. And now the mattresses were in a messy pile on the floor. Children were jumping on them, and the general vibe was wild. It felt out of control. I decided to limit the options when it came to the mattresses. I put them back in a neat pile and explained to the children that at aftercare there are only 2 things we can do with mattresses. You can take one to lie on and have a little rest, or you can use them to build a house. Can we take them outside? No. Can we jump on them? No. 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 Once they established that there were really only 2 options, they settled down significantly. No more frenetic energy. It was like calm, peaceful. A few children took some mattresses to go and build a house, and one child took a mattress and lay down with a blanket and a soft toy. The children building a house made walls with the mattresses and then pulled a blanket over the top to form a roof. Then they started collecting soft toys and tea things and carrying them into the house and deciding who would be who in the game. "I'll be the lady in the house," said the one. "I'll be the visitor. Can I be the dog?" You might think that children would be upset about having fewer choices. What I noticed was that when they had fewer choices, the children actually played better. They seemed more settled, less frenetic and distracted, and more able to enter into imaginative play. There's another example of giving choices, but also limiting choices. A primary school teacher found that when children in her class finished their work early, some of them got up to mischief and distracted the other children who were still trying to work. The teacher made a chart which she posted on the board whenever they had work to do. The chart said, "Things I can do when I finish my work." On the list was talk to a friend, walk around, ask for another worksheet, do some other work, read quietly, or rest with my head on the desk. The teacher would put magnets next to the options that were available that day. Talk to a friend and walk around did not usually have magnets next to them. This worked really well. The children loved checking their options and choosing what to do, and there was a significant improvement in their behavior. This is another example of giving choices, but also limiting these choices. Sometimes children will want a choice, but you will decide not to give them one. You might even say something like, "This is not optional. In other situations, you'll have a choice, but this is something we have to do." At times like this, it can be helpful to give children a voice, if not a choice. For example, once we were going away for a weekend with some friends and their children, and our two children started saying that they didn't want to go with us. We told them that going with us was not a choice, but we wanted to know why they didn't want to go. And so that evening we had a family meeting to listen to their concerns. As we listened to them, we could see that their main concern was sharing a room with other children they didn't know very well. Both of our children are introverts and would need to be on their own sometimes. We asked them if there was anything they could think of that would make this aspect of the weekend easier. They suggested staying with their grandparents and not going with us. We reminded them that that was not an option. So they came up with another idea. Could they take a tent and sleep outside instead? We said that that would be fine. So in the end, they went with us, and they had a wonderful time with the other children, escaping to the tent for breaks from time to time and sleeping there at night. In this case, we didn't give them a choice about whether or not to come with us. We did give them a voice, and giving them a voice showed us something we could give them a choice about, which was where to sleep. Children are often more able to accept the times they don't have a choice if we help them through that with the skill of active listening. With active listening, you would listen to what they have to say and reflect back what it is that's difficult for them. For example, after saying no to an activity, a mother listened to her son and said, "It's really hard for you that you can't go, isn't it? You wish you could be with your friends tonight." Her son responded with, "Yes, I do." But you could see from the way he responded that he appreciated being understood in that moment. His mom wasn't giving her son a choice, but she did give him a voice. She listened to how he felt and didn't make him wrong for wanting to go. Instead, she responded to him with understanding. So when you're not giving a choice, that's okay. As parents and teachers, we often need to say no. When you're not giving a choice, it's important to realize that now the child has to do something that they would really prefer not to do, and they may be feeling quite unmotivated and resistant. The good news is that there are other nonviolent tools in the toolkit that you can use when you can't use choice, like active listening. You might also use tools like distraction to take their mind off that difficult task, or reward to motivate them more. Like choice, these are all tools which support children to do better rather than punishing them. In summary, choices are definitely helpful in discipline. They tend to increase motivation and decrease or prevent problem behavior. A real choice is where you don't mind or don't try to control what the child chooses. So don't give a choice and then try to make them choose your choice. Not giving a choice would be better than trying to control their choice. You don't always have to give a choice. In fact, it's often better not to. A guideline would be to give choices you are happy to give and choices which are good for the child. There is such a thing as choice overload, So don't give too many choices. Your child shouldn't be making decisions at every point of the day. That's actually quite a heavy load for a child to bear. It would be better for us as adults to carry most of the decision making so that they can just enjoy being children. Some things should not be a choice. And when you're not giving a choice, remember that you can still give your child a voice using active listening. There are also other tools you can use to support a child through doing a task that they hate, such as distraction or reward. So you can see from what I'm saying that giving a choice is not a good or bad tool. The question is whether a child would benefit from a choice or not, because what we do in discipline needs to fit with the child's needs and signals. So let's work at attuning to each child, reading their signals, and responding according to what they really need. That way we'll be able to see where to give choices and where not to, because attunement to the child, rather than any particular discipline tool, is a key to good discipline. That's all for now. I'll be back soon with more on nonviolent discipline. Press like if you found this video helpful and don't forget to subscribe. If you would like more information on nonviolent discipline, you can visit the Peace Discipline website where you'll find a toolkit of nonviolent discipline options and some published research. Resources such as the toolkit and these videos are free to promote safer environments for children, so please share them with others who may find them helpful. Thanks for watching.